Hello, uh, my friends and family. Joe Pometto Law Show is live once again. 8:18. I'm 18 minutes late. If you're still around, if you're still up, if you still want to talk, come on in. Ask me some questions. We can talk about my videos. We can talk about the latest legal news, anything and everything that you want to chat about. I apologize for being late. I don't have any good excuse except life has just been crazy lately. I went on vacation and it's been nonstop ever since I got back. It's been tough doing the show every Wednesday. Been sick the last week. My voice probably sounds better now, but it wasn't feeling great previously. Really, today is just the first day that I started feeling better. So here I am. I've been pumping myself full of cold medicine and Diet Coke and ibuprofen. Where I went to Sandbridge, Virginia, which is very close to Virginia Beach. Hi, Kelly. Thank you. Sandbridge, Virginia, which is very close to Virginia Beach. It's one of these communities. You bet, nutcase. I do want to stay sick because I like my Diet Coke. But Sandbridge is nice. It's a bunch of it's right on the water. This big long peninsula that sticks out. The Long Beach, same beach as Virginia Beach, but much farther down. And they just built all these vacation houses. It's really beautiful, really nice, peaceful, and relaxing. It felt great. And just been nonstop since then, and been sick. And I went fishing last weekend. I didn't catch anything, but I got drunk while sick, which also I don't advise. And so I'm gonna say, drinking the Diet Coke, but drinking beer while sick ain't the greatest way to get over your cold either. So I drank a bunch of beer, and I felt like crap Sunday and Monday and Tuesday, and because I was sick and hungover for at least a day, but feeling much better now. Double whammy, drinking while sick. You know it, nutcase. When you get drunk enough, you don't feel it, but so yeah, pounding the Diet Cokes. I shouldn't drink the Diet. What I hear, I heard Donald Trump drinks like 7 or 8 Diet Cokes every single day. So holy hell. And now you got Bernie, who's got to have heart surgery. I wonder what his beverage of choice is. But I drink a lot of coffee, a lot of Diet Coke, and a lot of water. And I don't drink that much beer, but I do like to get buzzed every couple of weeks or have a couple of drinks. So does anybody have any topics that they would like to discuss? He's old. That's what I'm saying, right? Trump is like 72 and he pounds of Diet Cokes. And you're right. He doesn't drink alcohol or smoke, though, Mr. Cooper. I do not smoke. I do have a cigar occasionally, probably 5 to 10 cigars per year. But I do not smoke cigarettes or anything else, frankly. And I don't drink that often, but I do drink occasionally. So, Diet Coke, occasional alcohol, and some cigars, I might make it to 68. But Mr. Cooper, yeah. Well, looks like Bernie's in trouble. They say, they're coming out with some longevity drugs that might keep us alive no matter how unhealthy our lifestyles are. But I'm here to talk about the law. I'll talk about anything at all. If you want to talk about drinking Diet Coke and soda, we can talk about that. If you want to talk about the law, let me know. If anybody wants to drop a question, feel free to drop one. I will announce briefly that my channel got monetized after a decent amount of review. I think I'm actually not sure if I was banned prior, like 10 years ago when I had a blog and one of my friends went on it and clicked on it a million times and they kicked me off the blog, like Google Blogger. I thought I was banned because of that. But I actually think the reason I wasn't getting monetized is because I hadn't punched my birthday into the Google biographical information. I mean, how ridiculous is that? Like, they're like, oh, your birthday's not, but like, I didn't know I had to punch that in because Google has like all this crap all over the place and they want it all to be accurate, or, they don't let you make money on YouTube. Well, maybe I didn't punch my birthday in when I created my Google account 17 years ago. But I'm glad I got it. I put the birthday in, they gave me the monetization. So that's nice. Yeah. Google knows all, but they know so much, it makes them dumb. The Amber Guyger verdict. That's an interesting topic, Mr. Cooper. So my understanding, and I did not follow it that closely. But I'll give you my educated yet uninformed opinion. So I'm educated on the law, not the law of her state, but I'm uninformed on exactly all the facts of her case or what she was convicted of. It's my understanding she was ultimately convicted of first-degree murder and given a 10-year sentence. So the first thing I would say is I do not believe that she should have been convicted. And remember, I'm all for, I'm in a weird position because I'm a criminal defense attorney. So the police are generally my adversaries. I mean, I have good relationships with all of them, but if I got to go to trial, I got to take them apart. So I do not think that she should have been convicted of first-degree murder, because first-degree murder in what I believe is all 50 states, but certainly in Pennsylvania, is first-degree murder is premeditation, intent. I don't think that was present because everything here happened so quickly. Okay, so what do you have if you don't have first degree? Second degree murder is essentially a killing that occurs in the act of committing another felony, at least in Pennsylvania. So second degree murder is not applicable. And then third degree murder is essentially an involuntary manslaughter. I believe that's what she should have been convicted of, is an involuntary manslaughter, because she had the subjective belief that she was in her house. Now, it was a false and incorrect belief, but that's what she subjectively believed. Obviously, the jury didn't give her much credit for that. If they did, they would have applied the Castle Doctrine. If she would have won on the Castle Doctrine argument, she would have never been convicted. I don't believe that she had the benefit of the Castle Doctrine because it didn't actually happen in her home. Now, maybe the judge allowed the attorneys to argue the Castle Doctrine, but I believe that they rightly did not apply it because it didn't occur in her home, even though she believed it was in her home. Now, then you're getting into a real deep argument there on the Castle Doctrine. So I think that she should have been convicted of involuntary manslaughter. It's my understanding she was convicted of first degree, which requires premeditation and intent. And so she gets convicted of first degree, and she ends up with a 10-year sentence, which is a light sentence considering it's first degree. Many first degree homicide defendants get life in jail or 40-year sentences. I don't believe she was convicted of manslaughter, Mr. Cooper. I believe she was convicted of first-degree murder, which is an intentional killing. Now, involuntary manslaughter, I've handled involuntary manslaughter cases. The guidelines, and so the sentencing matrix, which the judges use to sentence on an involuntary manslaughter, is just a couple of years in jail. That's why you see like vehicular homicides. People do go to jail, but they only go to jail for a couple of years. That's because it's an unintentional killing. I believe she should have got involuntary manslaughter. That's what I believe the proper charge was, because she believed that she was in her home and she didn't have a premeditated, she didn't kill him with premeditation in mind. Because she made, she made a mistake here. And I'll give you another example. I heard another lawyer comment that when she pulled her gun, her intent was to kill. Well, Mr. Cooper, I'm sure that's what the district attorneys argued. The prosecutors argued that. And look, it's up to a jury what they want to believe. But I don't believe that. I don't believe that she should have been convicted of first-degree murder. I would certainly appeal this, no doubt at all, because it was a quick. Her intent was to kill, but anyone getting off from long day would make same mistake 50% of the time. I believe that they should have found that it was an involuntary, reckless killing, and because there was a certain degree of self-defense, even though it was a subjective belief that emanated from her. But I'll give you an example of an involuntary manslaughter case. I didn't do this trial, but this happened in my county in Pennsylvania, and I sat in with another attorney who did the trial. It was a couple of kids, 18, 19, 20 years old, and they were into the wrong stuff, drug dealers, gangbangers, and I don't know if it was an AR-15 exactly, but it was maybe it was an Uzi. I can't remember. It was an AR-15 like gun. Actually, God, I'd have to look that up. Folding gun. What the hell was it? Magpul, shooting the full conceal. No. 5 best folding truck guns. Portable power. Anyway, they had, I can't remember the name of the weapon, but it was like a Tech 9. Okay, it was a Tech 9. That's what it was. Tech 9 gun. Yeah, no, it wasn't exactly the Tech 9. Anyway, some sort of semi-automatic, long-barreled gun that bends in half for storage purposes. So you can store it. All right, lawyers speak for cops training a shooting to stop the threat. You could fold this gun in half. All right, and then on Tech 9 with collapsible stock. Exactly, nutcase. So this 19-year-old kid is sitting in his bedroom with a Tech 9 collapsible gun, and he pulls it up. All right, and across the hallway is his cousin, and he's playing with the Tech 9 collapsible. Bang, shoots his cousin. His cousin dies. The kid was broken up. They charged him with first-degree murder. The kid testified, was like, look, I was playing with the gun and I pulled the trigger. He didn't intend to kill him. He got involuntary manslaughter, did a couple of years in jail. The family it was a horrible case because it divided this family, and the family on one side was horrified at the decision, and then the other side, they were celebrating. The kid went to jail for a couple of years and got out. So that's probably a more straightforward involuntary killing. Whereas here, there is an element of intent because of what you heard. She did have to pull the gun out and pull the trigger. However, first degree, at least in Pennsylvania, requires more than just an intent. It requires a degree of malice. Here's some lawyer speak for you: malice aforethought or premeditation. And a couple of seconds of premeditation, in my opinion, just isn't enough. And she was acting with the subjective belief that she was in her house and it was a threat. So that's my opinion of it. I do think that with 10, she got 10 years, which is a light sentence on a first degree. So I think that's fair on a first degree, considering she had no prior record, no criminal history. But I think it should have been an involuntary, and she should have done 2 to 4, 3 to 6, 4 to 8, something along those lines. because I don't believe that she did it intentionally. I don't know if race played a factor. That's certainly an argument. Listen, if I was the prosecutor, I would make that argument. I would be interested to hear what the jurors have to say if they pulled the jurors afterwards. I'm sure we'll start to see those stories come out. But yeah, it's a pretty wild case, and it's funny. In my world of defense attorneys, I know some that were applauding it, and some who were not very happy with it. But generally, in that situation, I'm a defense kind of guy. So I think that was a little much. Again, I see first degree murders. It's generally stick 'em up type stuff, drug deals where one or both parties bring a gun to the drug deal and end up shooting the other person and taking the drugs, or drive-by shootings, or just intentional, assassination-style murders over in drug land. And then, of course, we see that a lot of domestic violence can end in death. But those could be first degree, but you also have a heat of passion defense, but that's not something that she would have here. I mean, heat of passion defense is you walk in and your significant other is cheating on you and you lose your mind. Okay, it's not an easy defense to make, but it can be made, and it has been done. So very interesting, huh? So, that's I believe it should have been involuntary. That's my personal opinion. Did you see the brother hugger in court? She's a cop with training, supposed to have more situational awareness. Yeah, it's kind of funny here. In a way, her training was a double-edged sword. Don't you think? It was a double-edged sword, because in one sense, I think a civilian would be less likely to pull the gun out and shoot. Maybe out of fear, but an officer may be quicker to pull the gun out and use it in a defensive measure because they're not afraid to use their weapon. And so that training, she saw a threat, and that training just kicked in, and boom, she shot him. So in that sense, it worked against her. But then you have, of course, the other argument. Well, in that sense, it should protect her a little more, right? Like, because it's almost reflexive. In the other sense, like you said, she was an officer, and she has a greater duty to handle a weapon with care. And that's also a very interesting argument, because it's just like when, it's like, this is a bad example, but it gets my point across. A doctor goes and treats someone's cut. They have a higher duty to treat that cut correctly than, say, a nurse or, your grandmother would, who's helping you clean up a cut and put stitches in. If the grandmother screws up the stitches, you're the idiot, right? But if the doctor screws up the stitches, he's the idiot. Just like I'm a lawyer, it's like if a client comes and takes me on and I screw up their case, I'm the idiot, not the client. But if a client handles their own case and they screw it up, they're the idiot. She says she yelled, "Show me your hands." It's murder to shoot an unarmed man. That's not a threat. I'm getting a lot of differing opinions over here in the chat box. Very, very split. I think that's probably what you would see amongst the general populace. Like I said, even in my circle of criminal defense attorneys and attorneys in general, a lot of them were split. I saw a lot of deferring reactions to the case. It's very, very interesting. And I think when you got sort of that 50-50 here, it's really tough to say who's right. I mean, it's tough to say who's right. Reasonable people can defer on their opinion. My unprofessional opinion, manslaughter, Mr. K. Yeah, my professional opinion, again, is manslaughter, just because the majority of premeditated first-degree murder cases are much more planned out killings. Like I said, drug land assassinations, drive-by shootings, or shootings. So here's an interesting thing is if you commit a burglary and you end up shooting someone, you're generally going to get second degree murder, which is a murder that occurs in the furtherance of a felony. Now that's if you're convicted of that, that's like, well, you didn't intend to kill someone when you burglarized that house. Okay. But then let's say you were burglarizing this house and somebody jumped at you with a gun and boom, you shot that person. You're going to get second degree because you should have never been committing that burglary. However, that wouldn't necessarily be first degree, even though you were committing the crime. So I really think this was a bit of a stretch here for first degree murder. But it's very interesting case. It really is. Let's move on to another topic. We're getting crazy here over in the chat. Is there any other topics that anybody would like to address? Yeah, Mr. Cooper, that's an interesting thing. Why would a prosecutor go for that? You could argue that there's political pressure for the prosecutors to frankly go after police in this highly politicized environment that we are in. Prosecutors have a microscope on them, perhaps like they never have before, and there was a very highly publicized case in Pittsburgh. It was Antoine Rose, where basically a 17-year-old kid was in a car when they committed a drive-by shooting. The police pulled them over, and the kid was running away from the car, and the cop shot him. And the DA in this county put him on trial for murder. He was acquitted of all charges. And then we get this situation here. Again, I'd be very interested to hear what the jurors have to say. I think very, very, public outrage. I mean, you're right. It's just we're living in a very different political environment. And I do believe that prosecutors should closely scrutinize their cases, but they also should, when they read a case, they should say, this to me, if I was a prosecutor and I read that case, I would have said, this is involuntary manslaughter. We're going to trial on involuntary manslaughter. And I would not have charged the first degree murder because the truth of the matter is a jury, when you put charges in front of a jury, you don't know which way the jury has to go. What a lot of people don't understand is that juries don't have to explain themselves. They can find someone guilty or not guilty, and the jury doesn't have to tell you why they did that. They don't write any opinion. Okay. Now you can go to the judge and see if there was enough evidence to factually support the jury's decision. And sometimes judges will, judge can override a jury decision. It's very rare. It's very rare. We had a judge nullify a jury decision here in Allegheny County. It was big news. What about, hi, I'm going through divorce using a mediator in California. My husband spent lots of money during this beginning stage. He has not provided mediator any financial statements yet. NorCal Prepper Val. So I don't know how it works in California. All right. But generally, a mediation is an opportunity for both parties to put their cases out before a mediator. And then the mediator will look at both sides and will say, this is where I think, like he sort of plays judge. This is where I think we should agree on things. Okay. And if you get it settled at the mediation, everybody saves time and money and you can move on from it much earlier. However, sometimes mediations take place with incomplete evidence and documentation, and that's just a fact. Now, if one party comes to the mediation unprepared, does it make it less likely the mediation will be successful? Yes. You want both parties to be fully prepared when they come to the mediation. But like you said, your husband hasn't submitted those financial statements. That's not going to make it easier for a deal to get done. So my advice to you, is to get an attorney, get a shark. Okay, protect your rights and fight like hell so that you are fairly represented and that you get a fair shake through the entire process. Again, I don't know all the rules in California, so California, the mediation might be mandatory. Regardless, if he doesn't have his financial statements, that's probably not gonna like really hurt him in any way, but it will hurt the mediation and its chances of success. So I hope you have an attorney, and I hope you have one who's gonna fight like hell for you. She might get a retrial and appeal. I would appeal that. I would appeal that case, Taze. There's several arguments. Number one is that the jury's decision was legally deficient, that there's not enough, that basically, that they can't find premeditation here given the facts. You can also argue sufficiency of the evidence and anything else that went haywire during the trial. And you really have to be the attorney in there. I can't analyze another state, but anything else that went haywire in the trial, she could appeal everything. And I would imagine that she has a decent shot here. The problem too is that public outrage and media play on a jury as well. Okay, and so the coverage of this may have doomed her before they even got into the courtroom. And I don't know if her attorneys asked for a special jury. Like, for instance, here in Pennsylvania, when they had Bill Cosby on trial out in Philly, his attorneys say he's not going to get a fair jury out in Philly. So they brought a jury from Allegheny County and shipped them out to Philly to try Bill Cosby. Can you tell me what statute being suspicious falls under? Thailand weekends. I don't believe there is one. How about, what do you look for in a jury would exclude some and makes other keepers? Do you prefer dum-dums? Try to get rid of natural leaders. Honestly, Mr. Cooper, it depends entirely on the case. And attorneys are to what they can ask jurors. But in Allegheny County, what will happen is they're going to fill out a questionnaire asking of whether or not they can be fair. And depending on how they answer those questions, it's going to shape my questions. So basically, I want to know is, have they ever been involved in a situation like the one that the person's on trial for? Have they had loved ones who have been in a situation like that? Have they had prior experiences with the police or prosecutors that may taint their judgment? Those are the things that I really look for. I will tell you, in Allegheny County, let me ask you this. Who do you think, so they've taken demographic data in Allegheny County and they've said this person is your average juror. Okay. Who do you think, and I don't know if you guys know Pittsburgh or how familiar you are with Pittsburgh, but who do you think the average juror is? And I'm talking, male or female, black, white, some other minority, age, etc. Who do you guys think is the average juror? And I want to wait. I want to see a couple of answers here. Mass one, white male, what age? White male, 40. Okay. And what I'm asking is, what do you guys think the average juror is? So we're talking male, female, age, race, any other characteristics that you think belongs to the average juror. And I'll let you know who the average juror is in Allegheny County. Now, different counties are going to differ because they have a different makeup of individuals. I've seen this dude say stuff that is crazy wrong. Who is this Thailand weekends? He's trolling me, man. I was laying the foundation to show he was crazy wrong in a vid he made. Okay, guess fit Mr. Cooper. So I got white male 40, Dana Gunter, white male 30s, Mr. Cooper, guess 50, white female, any 20 to 50 that doesn't say I know the law. Yeah, maybe. I want a couple. He's trolling. Seems he has disagreement, but can verbalize appropriately. Thailand, I know it's enough to demand ID. Pointing out a person was wrong is not trolling. Well, no, you asked me about a statute, Thailand. There are statutes that require people to show ID if the police are questioning them and they have reasonable suspicion. Now, reasonable suspicion is not defined by statutes; it's defined by the case law. And there's no black and white rule that says this is reasonable suspicion. Reasonable suspicion is determined on a case by case basis, and generally the Commonwealth will have to show some sort of articulable facts that a crime may have occurred. So I can't. I'm not saying there is no statute. Number one. There is a statute that, yeah, there does have to be reasonable suspicion of a crime. Absolutely. Reasonable suspicion is a case by case basis, sir. You claimed RS of being suspicious wasn't. I don't understand. I claimed reasonable suspicion of being suspicious was enough. That doesn't make sense. Come at me with a question that makes sense. You know, proper grammar and syntax, and I'll answer. Okay. Nobody else wants to tell me who they think the average juror is. Mr. Cooper is correct. Middle-aged white female in her 50s is actually the correct answer. So what's happening there? Wouldn't you want your jurors to be sympathetic to your defendant? Absolutely, Mr. Cooper. So what happens there? What you have to understand is the prosecution and the defendant both get to strike some jurors. Okay, so what happens is defense attorneys are generally going to be striking white conservative males. White males who may sympathize with law enforcement, and prosecutors are generally going to be striking minorities who may sympathize more with a defendant and may have a more negative opinion of law enforcement. So when you start to remove white males and you start to remove minorities, what do you get? You get white females, because there's still more white people in the population than any other race. And then the reason that they are middle-aged is because they don't have jobs. A lot of them are retired, and they don't work. So it's easy for them to come and be jurors, because a lot of younger people have jobs or are in situations that require them to be at work, and they are able to get exemptions from jury duty much easier, or they're more likely to come in there and lie in order to get out of jury duty. Whereas a 50-ish white female, kids are out of the house, they may enjoy jury duty. They may say, hey, this is going to be fun. This is going to be interesting. So that's where you get it. In the video you made about the guy being suspicious, they said they had RS, that he was suspicious, so they could demand ID. I'm not sure which video you're talking about. If you tell me exactly which video, I'd be glad to address that. If you're talking about the one where the guy was videotaping in the parking lot, I can tell you what the reasonable suspicion was. Reasonable suspicion does not necessarily mean that the person is violating a statute. Okay, yeah, they'd like it. It's real lifetime for them. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're violating a statute. It means they are doing something that that could create a reason for the police to investigate. And what he was doing was, for an extended period of time, pacing around the same parking lot and taking video of municipal buildings, a fire department, and a school. Now, when he readily identified himself and his reason for videotaping, there probably would have never been an issue. Even if he didn't, let's say he didn't want to identify himself, if he would have provided a reason for his videotaping, that would have removed a degree of suspiciousness. But when the police approach, they ask him what he's doing, he won't tell them. That actually adds to the suspicion. So if you want to see what he was doing that caused reasonable suspicion, he was for an extended period of time, pacing around the same location, videotaping a municipal building, I believe the police department, a fire department, and a school. And when asked what he was doing, he refused to answer. Those are articulable facts that would likely meet the standard of reasonable suspicion. At that point in time, the police then would have reasonable suspicion or probable cause to ask him for his ID. Under that state law, they can do that in that situation, and those laws have been deemed constitutional. Then the individual refused to show ID, and he was arrested. So there you go, sir. There you go. And it doesn't. You know, reasonable suspicion of what? So reasonable suspicion doesn't necessarily have to be of a crime. And a reasonable suspicion of what he was doing was enough for them to ask, okay, exactly what was going on. Let's take a look. Boom, 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 boom. Associated police have that a person is armed and dangerous. Let's look up reasonable suspicion here. Combination of particular facts. If the officer has reasonable suspicion that detainee is armed, the officer such a detention does not violate the Fourth Amendment on reason, though it must be. However, well, that's true. Look, you're right. Actually, you're right. Reasonable suspicion does have to be of a crime. Does have to be of a crime. Now, let's look up laws requiring individuals to show ID. Okay, stop and identify statutes. Stop and identify. Ask at any time. Okay, at any time, police may approach a person and ask questions. The objective may be simply friendly conversation. Police may also suspect involvement in a crime, but lack specific and articulable facts that would justify a detention or arrest, and hope to attain these facts from the questioning. The person approached is not required to identify himself or answer any questions and may leave at any time. Police are not usually required to tell a person he is free to decline answers. Can usually determine whether the interaction is consensual by asking, "Am I free to go?" Reasonable suspicion. A person is detained when circumstances are such that a reasonable person would believe he is not free to leave. Police may question a person, but in general, the detainee may stop and identify that explicitly require a person detained. Before Hybel, it was unresolved whether a detainee could be arrested and prosecuted for refusing to disclose his name. Authority on this issue was split. In 5-4, the Nevada Stop and Identify law did not violate the court opinion implied a detainee was not required to produce, but could satisfy the requirement merely by stating his name. But allow refusal in some states has not addressed the validity, provide information other than his name. However, the detained person is not. Attention requires only that the police have reasonable suspicion that a person is involved in criminal activity. Okay.
Depends. Reasonable suspicion is evaluated using reasonable person, reasonable officer standard in which said person could reasonably suspect a person has been or is about to be engaged in criminal activity. It depends upon the totality of the circumstances and can result from a combination of particular facts, even if each is individually innocuous. So, that they don't need to show. They don't, even for reasonable suspicion. And this is likely, so number one, you're going to have a different definition for reasonable suspicion. In I just wanted to clear it up, and trust me, you were wrong. I don't believe, sir, that I was necessarily wrong. Reasonable suspicion in which you said person in the same circumstances could reasonably suspect a person has been or is about to be engaged in criminal activity. So they don't necessarily, the police don't have to sit here and say, well, so-and-so was. Well, so what crime were they reasonably suspicious of? That's a good point, Thailand weekends. And I would have to literally comb through the entire crime code of that particular state to tell you that. And I don't know how that played out in court, but there are likely dozens of crimes that the police could claim that this individual was suspected of committing or preparing to commit. So, for instance, it's. I mean, there's all kinds of instances where people could be partaking in legal activity, okay, and the police can come over and ask questions and detain. Okay. But you said having was enough, and that is not true. Okay, no, it is true. It is true that having once they have reasonable suspicion, they can ask for the identification. Now, once they have reasonable suspicion under the stop, yeah, that is true. Now, what you're claiming is, did they have reasonable suspicion? And I'm telling you that here's what I will tell you. You're right. I don't know 100% what law they are claiming that they had reasonable suspicion of him violating. But I guarantee you they could probably articulate about 10. And at the very least, they could use a disorderly conduct, which is a summary offense. And let's see, disorderly. Well, here's a good one here's a good one. Loitering, PA code. So loitering is, and this is just one. Loitering, prowling at night. And disorderly conduct. Let's look that up. Bum 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 bum. Bum 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 bum. You said that having reasonable suspicion of being suspicious was enough to you that you. Yeah, I mean, I listen, sir. I don't remember exactly what I said in that video, but what I'm telling you is that if the police can articulate any crime that they were reasonably suspicious of, all right, their prosecution under the stop and identify statute is likely going to hold up. So take that as my correction, and do what you want with it. Yeah, and they don't have to tell you what crime. They don't have to tell you what crime it is. Well, doesn't I? Well, I agree that I don't listen. I don't know what I said on that video, but I'm telling you now what my interpretation of the law is, and that is if the police can articulate any crime that they were reasonably suspicious of, they can ask for ID. Okay, and I'm going to type it in. Okay, and consider this my correction. I may have been wrong in what I said previously. I really don't remember. If the police can articulate any crime that they were reasonably suspicious of, they can ask for ID. Okay, you sir, and look, I admit that you may have caught me with falsely, with stating things a little incorrectly during my prior video. I make a lot of videos. I'm going to be wrong sometimes, and I may have been wrong in what I stated there. But what I'm telling you is that if the police can articulate any crime that they are suspicious of, the activity that they see doesn't have to be criminal in and of itself. And there are a lot of crimes in the crime code that they could probably articulate. So that is all on that topic. So you are welcome to stay, but I'm no longer going to speak on that topic. Let's move on to something else. You're right, Nake. Remember your Fifth Amendment. You can assert your Fifth Amendment right. I'm going to take one more question or one more topic before we call it a night, because I started a little bit late. Does anybody have anything that they would want to chat about or would like me to address? What is Antelope Valley, Taze? Bum, 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 bum. Bum, 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 bum. Patient dumping, Antelope Valley, patient dumping. What was my LSAT score? 172. Just kidding. If I scored a 172, I'd have been in Harvard, and I wouldn't be making YouTube videos. Not jury nullification. I think it's an interesting thing. I'll tell you one story I read about. Okay, you're done, Thailand. You are done because I'm not having fun. I answered your question. Good night, sir. Yeah, okay. So many lawyers out there. How do I choose? That's a good question. Number one, Mr. Cooper. The way to choose is to talk to several attorneys. Talk to several of them, and the one you feel most comfortable with, you then select. That's how you do it. A lot of people just go off one. They find the first attorney they talk to, they hire. Fine, fair enough. I get a lot of clients that way. But I think the best way to find an attorney is to talk to several attorneys. And if you know attorneys, ask around about them, get their reputation, think about what you want in the case and see if this person is good at it. Jury nullification. Okay, my last story before we go is this. I was watching, maybe you guys have heard this. I was watching this story. It was a documentary or so back in the 1980s, and this guy molested a child. Okay, raped a kid. It might have been a boy or girl. I can't remember. And when he was on trial, I think, I don't remember if he was found not guilty or guilty, but the father came to the trial with a gun, boom, and shot the child molester dead. They put him on trial and he got a not guilty. Okay. Now that was clearly a premeditated killing. That's an example of jury nullification where, maybe this guy who killed this individual, you may say he was justified in killing him. I don't know. I don't know. But the way, if you strictly applied the law, he was guilty of first degree. He premeditated it. He showed up. He had the gun. He waited to the right opportunity. Bang, shot him, and he died. He was guilty of first degree, and the jury gave him a not guilty. I mean, that was jury nullification. I don't know. A lot of people would agree with that. Yeah, I guess lawyers don't like it. Lawyers don't like it when it doesn't go work in their favor. I'm sure the lawyers who got the not guilty for that father, they think that they're the fucking best attorneys in the world, and they probably love it. And they'll go out and they'll justify jury nullification from now until kingdom come. And I just want to tell you guys, I don't like, I block that Thailand weekends. I don't like to block people, and I like to engage. Even sovereign citizens and auditors come on here. I'll answer their questions and I'll admit when I'm wrong. But he refused to drop the topic after I addressed it with him, and that's why I blocked him. He would have been free to stay and engage in the rest of the conversation. But if you're going to drop the same thing over and over again and ruin the experience for me and for everyone else, but also for me, that's why I'm booting him. I'm not booting him because he challenged me. Okay, I addressed his question, and I admit I may have even been wrong in what I stated, and I correct myself. I'm fine with admitting that I'm wrong when I'm wrong. But I booted him because he was ruining the experience, not because I didn't want to be challenged. I ask every one of you to challenge me in everything that I say, and I promise you, I am not right on everything. So I just wanted to explain that to everybody who's listening right now. That's my policy. I'm only going to block people if they're ruining the experience. It's not going to be because of their particular content. And so someone could come on in here and just, type fart noises or interrupt everybody's chat for no reason at all. I'm going to block them. Or they could come on here and ask me the same question 500 times. Both people are ruining the experience. Both people are going to get blocked. If I address them and they continue to ruin the experience, they're gone. So, I do try to be as fair and free for everyone to come on here. So I just wanted to let you guys know why I did that. Do you feel you have to be your own advocate with attorneys as you do with doctors? Dana, that is an excellent question, and the answer is yes. Because if you are not, the attorneys fall into patterns just like doctors do. They see a situation and this is how they treat it, right? Like if you come in and you see a doctor and you have all the symptoms of the cold, but you don't tell them that, you also have, I don't know, a strange tingling in the left side of your chest. Or even if you do, he might brush over, but, oh, no, it's a cold, it's a cold. No, go back at him, because the same thing is true of attorneys. Is we get into patterns, we say, this is what your case looks like, this is what we should do, da-da-da-da-da. You got to push back, and I'll admit sometimes when my clients push back, they will point out some important points to me that I didn't necessarily see before. Okay, so yes, you have to be your best own advocate with your attorney. And this is something that, and I have a lot of respect for public defenders. Okay, I do, because they have a really tough job and they have too many clients. But public defenders they have so many cases, they're gonna slot you in. They're gonna slot you in. And that's one of the advantages of having a private attorney is you're gonna be able to sit down for an hour and tell that attorney everything you want them to know. And if they're not hearing it, you got to let them hear it. And here's one more thing. One more thing is don't be afraid to fire your attorney. Now, if you paid them, if they did work and you paid them, you're not going to get that money back. But if you don't feel like they're doing the good enough job for you or doing what you want or what's right for you, don't be afraid to fire them and go get another lawyer. My honest opinion of public defenders, look, I have a lot of friends that are public defenders. My honest opinion is most of them are good attorneys. Okay. The problem is they do not have the time to pay attention to every case. And so a lot of clients come away feeling like, number one, they didn't get personal attention. Number two, that they got railroaded. And the public defenders have to take, this is an unfortunate reality, but the public defenders have to take the thing of, okay, I have 100 cases this week. I'm going to do as best as I can on as many cases as I can. But some of those cases, 100 cases, some of those clients, 5, 10, 15 of them are going to fall through the cracks, and they're not going to get the good enough representation that they could have. And it's not because that lawyer doesn't care. It's that lawyer doesn't have the human capacity or the time to handle it. Now, there are some public defenders offices that are highly funded, and you will get very skilled attorneys who will spend the time with you. For instance, if you ever get a federal case, you will get a federal appointed, you will get the federal public defender. Federal public defenders are better, as good at, you have to be like a kick-ass attorney to be a federal public defender. But public defenders on the state level are generally overworked and sometimes inexperienced, and that can hurt their clients. And that's one of the advantages of getting a private attorney, is that attorney is going to take the time to sit down with you and spend on your case. County I live in doesn't have public defenders. Some counties share public defenders days, or they just appoint attorneys, and you get private attorneys, and then it's like, and not all private attorneys are good either. I mean, some of them are fly by night. I mean, and some of them, yeah, I mean, I'm not going to say all private attorneys are great. That's why I said you got to shop around and you need to talk to attorneys. Don't be afraid to meet with 3 different attorneys, get quotes from each of them, how they would handle your case, and then call them back. I mean, take a note, take a pen and a notepad, because if they offer free consultation, say to them, you offer a free consultation. Okay, how much time? Okay, 15 minutes. Can I come to your office for 15 minutes? They'll say yes. Go in, 15 minutes, boom, ask some questions, take notes, say thank you, I'll call you back. Go do the next one. Do it to at least 3 attorneys. That's truly my advice. That's truly my advice. Are you familiar with public defenders, that private defenders they appoint? Yeah, I do. I get court appointments days. So I'm a private court appointment attorney. That's not most of my work, but I have 5 to 10 of those at any given time, where I'm basically a public defender. Now, most defendants prefer private appointments because I will go and see them and I will treat them like I do my private clients. And some defendants will play a game. They'll fire the public defender so that they can get a court-appointed attorney, because they know they'll get a better attorney, or they'll get, better attention. But you got to understand, the public defender, they do have some really good attorneys in there. People been practicing 20, 30 years, done multiple homicides, child, abuse type cases, and they're really good. But those people are only handling like the real serious cases, and that's the problem. Is low-level offenders get screwed a lot of the times. So if I meet with Joe Blow, can I tell him Joe Pometto says you suck and are overpriced? Yeah, if you meet Joe Blow, you can tell him that. Any other attorney, you can't tell that. Of course, any attorney that's not in my state, I could really care less. So if they're from out of state, I don't care. But feel free to come in here and run it past me. Run it past me. You're welcome, Mr. Cooper. Continue to watch. I appreciate everybody's attention. I'm monetized now. I can receive super chats. I'm never going to ask for super chats. If you give me a super chat, I'll give you super preference. The reality is right now is that my audience is big, but it's small enough that I don't really care. But if my channel continues to grow and my audience gets bigger and bigger, it may come to the point where I can only answer the super chat type questions. But I'm just letting you know, monetized super chats there. Again, and I say this in all my videos, I have a Patreon. You can donate, but you can support the show for free just by coming on here, just by liking, commenting, and subscribing. That's enough. This content will always remain free. But I would like to build it and make more money off of it over time. And because there's a lot of things I'd like to do with it that I can't. And maybe at some point in time, I'll be able to set aside a day or two because this will be income for me and really, really make some of the videos that I want to make and really get into deeper content and perhaps have animation, etc., stuff like that. I mean, I have all this stuff in my mind, but I don't have time for that. This, I can sit down and I can talk for an hour. I don't know. Eric hasn't been, he just left me a comment, but he hasn't been on. And, I was 20 minutes late today, but